This is Research Like a Pro, episode 165, ProGen Study Groups and Becoming a Professional Genealogist. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, a Genealogist Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Research Like a Pro.
Hi, Nicole. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I've been watching the lectures from IGHR that I missed. There were a couple that I didn't finish watching because I had to go pick up the kids from school. And one of them was Paul Woodbury talking about a case that he did where he used a lot of coverage analysis. It was really interesting to think about that. So it was an advanced DNA evidence course, and his lectures were all based on client projects that he had done, and he has a lot of experience using DNA evidence to help him solve difficult cases. And he uses these interesting methods that are kind of unique to him that he's kind of developed himself. So it's kind of fun to hear him talk about it. The thing that I really took away from it is that he really recommends testing several descendants of the research subject through independent child lines and then calculating the coverage that you have of that research subject or that ancestor. He has a formula that he uses, but basically it's kind of thinking about like each of the children will inherit about 50% of the parents' DNA. And then that grows smaller the more generations removed you are from the ancestor. And so then what he has kind of started doing is estimating relationships of ancestors to other historical people based on the coverage that he has of those historical people with descendants of theirs that have tested and comparing unique segments that they share. And it's a pretty advanced concept, but it's kind of interesting because sometimes the relationships are ambiguous. You can't figure them out from just taking like 95 centimorgans and putting it into the shared centimorgan project because there's so many relationships that it could be. So it's a little bit harder when you're that far removed, but when you can take back and estimate how many centimorgans, this person might have shared with this other person who is hypothesized to be their first cousin, then you can see if that lines up.
Right.
And of course, it's just estimating, but it's still a strategy that can get you closer to the answer.
Gives you a little bit more data to work with.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how I would do it, but it's cool to hear how he had success with it.
Yeah, Paul is really leading the way, I feel like, in a lot of these advanced methodologies because he's had to develop them to solve his client projects. And I feel like that is how we have learned so much is just doing these projects. And the client work that comes in is always so unique and interesting, and it makes you think of different ways to do things. So for any of our listeners, if you can do somebody else's genealogy, like whether it's paid or pro bono, it really is a great way to learn because you have to do something different than you're used to.
That's true. And if you're doing it for a client and you're under a time limit, that really forces you to think about the most efficient way to do that. And Paul talked about that a lot. Like, how can we be more efficient in getting to the data set that we need? And usually the way he does that is through clustering. So he talked about using Node Excel to make network graphs, and he prefers that over Gephi, which I use Gephi, but Node Excel is nice too. And then he also talked about some other clustering methods he likes, which are the Collins-Leeds method with DNA GEDCOM. And of course, he's usually clustering ancestry matches because that's the largest database. And then there's also the shared clustering tool from Jonathan Brecher. There's a few different options out there for clustering ancestry matches, and it's really helpful to get you started on the right foot with that genetic network that you are wanting to focus on.
Yep. That is so key to these projects, and especially with client work or when you're working with someone else's DNA. You don't know their families, you don't recognize surnames, you don't understand how everything fits together. So it gives you a head start on putting together the related groups.
Yes. So what have you been doing?
Well, we're actually getting ready to do a road trip going back to Wichita to see my other daughter. and we were trying to think if we had some family history sites along the way. And I seem to remember that my husband had some family in Nebraska. So he looked them up and we found the locations. And so we're going to see if we can go visit some sites in Nebraska, which will be fun. Some family history touring, I guess, is what you would say. So we're kind of looking forward to that. Something a little different.
Yay. Did you find some cemeteries to visit?
We haven't found the specific ones. Yesterday, we just spent time finding the family and looking at all the records and trying to nail down the locations.
Hmm.
And now we've got to go take a look and see who was buried and where the cemeteries are, if they even still exist. But if nothing else, we at least have the locations of the towns that they lived in. And I need to dig into it now and see what I can figure out. Someplace to go visit.
Cool. That'll be neat. I wish I was going to go with you.
We'll take pictures. Well, let's get to what we're talking about today, which is becoming a professional genealogist and the ProGen Study Groups. So I link these together in a blog post I wrote because you and I have both been through the ProGen Study Group. And I thought it would just be fun to talk about some of the things we study. And if someone doesn't want to do the study group, they can still use some of the things that we learned about to practice on their own. So, what is ProGen? Where did it start? Well, in 2007, the first ProGen study group met, and they've been numbered consecutively from then. So, number one was 2007, and they read and discussed the first edition of Professional Genealogy, which was edited by Elizabeth Shown Mills. And so the subtitle of that is a manual for researchers, writers, editors, lecturers, and librarians. And as that title suggests, there's chapters written by experts in the field for all sorts of different types of professions that you might have through the field of professional genealogy. So the study group is all volunteer, and what it does is if you're interested in being a professional in any way, shape, or form, it lets you get together and study. It gives you motivation to read the chapters and then to study it and discuss it. Each group is mentored by either an accredited or certified genealogist. So someone who has also been through the ProGen program and already working in the field. And I started as a student in 2016 and I joined ProGen 33. So there had been a lot of groups since it began. And then I recently mentored ProGen 44. So that was fun. I'm an accredited genealogist, and so they asked me to mentor that group, which was awesome. And it was really fun. By ProGen 44, they had switched to the second edition of Professional Genealogy, also edited by Elizabeth Shown Mills. And this one has a different subheading, Preparation, Practice, and Standards. So some of the chapters were very similar to the first edition and just updated. The world of genealogy has changed a lot since when the book actually was written, but we still used both books, and I really enjoyed the assignments. They made me do some things I probably wouldn't have done, like writing a business contract or creating an education plan.
That's great that you got that experience to kind of prepare you for becoming a professional. And I also did the ProGen study group. I was in ProGen 46, and my mentor was Shannon Green, who's a certified genealogist. And I really learned a lot from her. It was a wonderful experience. I learned a lot from the others in my group as well. The way that the study group works is you meet each month and complete assignments, and then you give and receive feedback on those assignments. And you also read the chapters from Professional Genealogy. So you're kind of like reading about a subject, and then you do an assignment that usually kind of goes along with it. The assignments don't always line up with the chapters because the assignments are mostly to help you prepare for certification. So a lot of the assignments have to do with the portfolio for BCG certification. So the program takes 14 months. Has it always been that way?
When I did it, it was 18 months. And then they went to 12 months and then they went to 14 months. So they've done a little bit of adjusting just to see what works the best.
18 months is so long to keep going. I think by the end of 14 months, I was done. I think mine was 14 months.
Yeah,
Either 12 or 14, I think, is a good
yeah.
amount.
They've been doing 14 for a while. When I mentored, it was 14. because they had tried 12 months, but they realized some of the assignments, like the big writing assignments, it worked better to write, get the feedback, and then edit for the next month. So that's why they added those extra 2 months.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having the chance to edit my case study and then turn it in again as kind of the final version. So, yeah, it was nice to have that. So, I'm looking at my Google Drive folder and I have 15 different lessons. So, I guess I did have the 14-month group. And then the last meeting, we just had like no assignment and just a lecture about teaching and lecturing or a discussion. They're not lectures, they're discussions. So, back to talking about what ProGen is. So, you have these chapters that you read, assignments that you do, and then you meet up once a month and you have a discussion with your peer group. And the mentor also is there attending, and he or she will give advice or answer questions. And these are virtual discussions. So, you get on Zoom and you have some discussion leaders who will pose the questions, and then everybody chimes in and answers, and shares their experiences and their ideas and kind of some of their takeaways from reading the chapter and doing the assignment. Often the discussion will go toward something that's not listed in the set of discussion questions. And that's okay. It's always good because, we want to talk about the things that are important and the things that we have questions about. And it just varies depending on the topic. It's fun to meet different genealogists from all over the country and some from different parts of the world. And everybody comes from different backgrounds and experiences and has different things they want to talk about and share and different plans for their professional life going forward. So it's a very interesting discussion usually.
Yeah, it really is. I love the discussions. And I love just getting to know these different genealogists, like you said, from all over the world and the country. It's really interesting because they do bring different perspectives. I'm here in Utah, and it was fun to hear what genealogy was like in Massachusetts or Florida or Australia. And, really kind of opens your mind up.
Yeah, and it's a good way to network too because you can use these contacts in the future to help you when you need research done in that area.
Absolutely. Because you've gotten to know them a little bit, you know what their skill sets are, and you trust them. It really is worth the efforts. You have to realize it does take effort, but you really have a lot of benefits. So let's talk a little bit about the experience you should have, because you don't want to sign up if you're just barely beginning your genealogy journey. You want to have some significant experience before you apply. So you have an application form that you fill out, and I'm just going to go over some of the things on that form, and it'll give you an idea of whether you're ready or not. So you want to consider how you measure up in each area. And if you don't measure up, if there's some things you need to work on, then just make a plan to get that experience. So they wonder if you've conducted research at 4 different types of repositories. So they want to know, have you ventured beyond just online research? Have you gone to a library or a courthouse or an archive, to make sure that you understand how that works? And then you need to have some experience at writing research reports, complete with source citations, documenting all of your findings, because you do a significant amount of writing and you need to know how to do that. You don't have to be an expert because you will get feedback and you'll practice, but you don't want to have this be the very first time you're writing or the very first time you're making citations. You want to have some experience. And then you also need to have some evidence analysis experience and know what we're talking about when we say source or information or evidence. And, these are things we talk about all the time on the podcast. And if you're actively researching and working on these things, then you would be fine.
It is important to think about the experience, before you join because you're going to be giving feedback to other people. And if you are brand new to genealogy and you don't really have experience writing, it's going to be a lot harder to give that feedback. And I do believe that they consider your application and see if you are ready.
Right.
So, how do you get ready to apply? Well, there's some educational prerequisites. One of them is that you have completed a genealogy research course, attended a genealogical institute, or other significant education in genealogy or historical research. Some other things are if you've studied scholarly genealogical articles and if you're currently taking genealogy clients. So those are just some ideas for things that maybe you can have done prior to applying to ProGen that would help you be prepared. So when I started ProGen, I had taken the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy's Intermediate Foundations, their Advanced DNA Practicum, and an Advanced DNA course with Karen Stanberry. So I remember, so at the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, it was time to submit the application for ProGen because I'd been on the waiting list, I think. So I was asking different people in my class, like, oh, which mentor should I choose? Because you can put which one you prefer or whatever. And I ended up sitting next to Anne Fremont, who is a close friend of Shannon Green, one of the mentors, and she recommended her. And I was very lucky to get to work with her. It was really fun.
That's great. I was with Shannon in my first institute, which was one also done by Karen Stanberry. I think it was her first advanced DNA institute course at SLIG. So I got to know her a little bit there. So that's great that you had such a good experience. That's so fun. My mentor was Harold Henderson, who is just great. And he was so funny and gave us all a lot of confidence in our work. I know I turned in my case study and his feedback on it was like, you should submit this to the NGSQ. And I was like, really? I still haven't done that, but it was nice to have that feedback from a certified genealogist who had also submitted to the queue and been accepted. So it does give you some confidence.
So, what was your education? What had you done before?
I had done accreditation. I was at the very end of accreditation. So I had written my 4 generation project and submitted that. To do accreditation, I had really done a self education course. I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember, but I would take one record type, like say the census, and I would read an entire book about that, watch all the webinars, and I would write my own outlines for how to use the census. I just really went in depth on every single record type, as well as my study of my states. So for accreditation, you need to have experience in all these things of the analysis and the writing and researching at repositories. So I had a self study course. I didn't do, Boston University or BYU's family history program. And I don't know that I had taken many institutes. Maybe I had only done the one institute, but I had just done a ton of self education. And I had done a little bit of client research. At that point, I wasn't doing a lot.
I'm just looking at their website now, and they just say the people who have the most success in the study group are those who have been practicing genealogy for several years and have completed some kind of coursework. And it sounds like your self study was a pretty good preparatory experience. It's good to kind of have a background. This isn't like an intermediate study group. It really is when you're intermediate level ready to transition to an advanced professional level. So you should have already had some intermediate level experience with either coursework, self study, your own research, or research for other people.
Right, just getting more advanced. So let's talk a little bit more about the curriculum. You explained a little bit how we have an assignment due each month. And, some of the assignments I liked more than others, but it makes you accomplish things you would otherwise procrastinate. So when I participated as a student, I knew that when I finished my accreditation, I wanted to start a genealogy business, but I had never done a business. I had no business experience whatsoever. And there were 2 assignments that really made me look at the business side of professional genealogy. I had to create a business and a marketing plan and a contract and fee analysis. And I've used all of that. When we launched Family Locket Genealogist in 2017, I already had all these things in place because I had to do them as an assignment. So it really was beneficial. And I know some people in our group, both when I was a mentor and when I was a student, really didn't have a plan to do a genealogy business. But, it's always good to just do something a little bit out of your comfort zone and see what happens.
Right. Yeah, we had the same thing with our group. Some people already had a business, some people were planning to start one, and others were just doing the study group to improve their research skills and weren't planning on, assisting clients or doing a business in the future, but they still participated in the assignment to make a business plan and thought about if they did start a business, what would it be and that kind of thing, which is always kind of fun.
It is. And you never know what's around the corner, what you might want to do in the future. And so it just gives you an opportunity to discuss it with others and get their feedback. With everybody coming from different backgrounds, I think that feedback was really useful. For one thing, it helps you see that, oh, wow, I am better than I thought I was, or it helps you see, oh, wow, I need to improve. So it gives you a little bit of sense of where you are, because sometimes you have no idea, am I a good genealogist or am I not? And it's really helpful to have some peers look at your work and give you some feedback on that.
Right. I think with a business plan assignment, even if you're not planning to become a professional genealogist that takes clients and you have a business plan, I think it's really good for all genealogists to kind of be aware of some of the things that professional genealogists have to do and have to deal with. And reading the chapter and having the discussion was really enlightening to understand those things and consider the fact that like when you do research for free for somebody, then they expect that all genealogy should be free and how that might hurt other professionals and that kind of thing. And I think it's still okay to do pro bono work, but it's just a consideration to take into account when you're thinking about the professional genealogy world and how it works.
I agree. Well, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the assignments really help you with portfolio preparation for the CG. I'm just curious how this helped you because I know you're in the midst of portfolio work, and I am guessing those assignments were really beneficial for you.
They were. I think that was the single most helpful thing I did right before starting my portfolio. I had done a lot of practice with writing research reports and research planning and analysis, but there were some things I hadn't ever tried doing before, which were parts of the portfolio, like the case study and the kinship determination project. So, practicing those portfolio elements in the ProGen study group where I got feedback and I had a chance to really work on how I would do it for my portfolio were really beneficial. And I learned a lot from them. I would highly recommend doing the ProGen study group to practice the portfolio elements before you start working on your portfolio. And my mentor, Shannon Green, said that one of the things she did when she was in ProGen was she did two assignments, one that she didn't share, which was for her portfolio, and one that she did share. She kind of worked along the ProGen study group schedule and worked on her portfolio as well. So I thought that was a really interesting idea too, if you're getting ready for certification.
That is a great idea because you could take the feedback from the one that you get peer review on, and then you probably made the same mistakes or, wrote it the same way, and then you could apply that feedback to what you're using for your portfolio. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know in my case, I wasn't working on a portfolio. I was in the process of submitting my four generation project, but it was really helpful because I needed to learn to write research reports, even though the four generation project is really similar to a research report. It was good just to get feedback on a specific report for one generation, just one little project. And then the case study, that was fun because that turned out to be the one that I would like to submit to the NGSQ, and it made me write in a different way, writing up a proof argument. And then kinship determination was fun too, because that one you get to add in all the details, historical background, all sorts of interesting things. So they're all different, and it was fun to take my writing and explore some different ways to do it. Because quite honestly, now in the client work, we do a lot of these types of things. I mean, I primarily do research reports, but sometimes a client wants more of a kinship determination paper. They want to have just all the facts and all the interesting things and the stories you can find. And then sometimes some of the research becomes more of a proof argument where you've proven something for the client and you need to write it up a little bit more like that. So it's good at getting all those experiences.
Yeah, that is really good. And all the different kinds of writing are helpful to have under your belt as a professional genealogist.
Right. Well, we've talked a lot about benefits, kind of intimated at a lot of them, but let's just kind of focus on that for a minute. So, we've already talked about how your writing gets better. because you're getting some feedback on it and you realize that you are using the same word over and over, or you're writing in the passive voice, or you're too wordy. There's so many ways we can improve writing. And then it also helps us with our business preparation, which we've talked about. But there's some benefits we've hinted at, and that is that the professional genealogy field revolves around networking. We cannot all have every experience for every locality or type of research, and you are going to need to have some people that you can reach out to or that you can refer potential clients to for something that comes in that you just don't know what to do with. If you have a project comes in and it's all Jewish research, you have no experience in that, you'd want to have someone you trust that you could refer that client to. Or if you have a lineage society application come in and you really have not done that, you'd want to refer them to someone else. So it's really nice to start building that network of trusted colleagues that you can suggest the client contact.
Yeah, that is a really good benefit that you may not consider that is really helpful in your professional career.
And people will refer to you. I know two of the people in my study groups when I was a mentor reached out to their specific genealogy societies and suggested that I come and do a webinar, a Zoom meeting, whatever, the online talk for their group. And that was really fun to meet with their group. And it gave me a nice introduction to a whole different group of genealogists. And then on the reverse side, I had a client project come in that was DNA as well as DAR, and I knew one of them who was really good at both of those things. And so I was able to give this client a good referral to someone that I knew I could trust. Networking is huge.
So, even if you don't want to become a professional genealogist, I think the ProGen Study Group is a great way to raise the level of your research. So, you can go to their website and learn more about it at progenstudygroups.com. And it's a good opportunity to network, to meet other genealogists, to learn from each other, and to really push yourself to complete difficult assignments and do something that you may not have done before. And then, of course, if you are wanting to become a professional genealogist, this is a very good program for you to not only read well written chapters from the professional genealogy textbook and understand the field of genealogy and some of the ins and outs of it, but also to practice and raise your writing and your research to the level that a professional should be at and prepare you to become a certified genealogist or an accredited genealogist.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it really helps you make the decision. I know some of the people in my group said, "Oh, wow, after doing all this, I don't think I want to be a professional. I want to just keep doing my own and write and submit to journals." And then others realize that they probably could become a professional and do client work. So if you're on the fence, it might help you to know which way to lean. So it's just a good experience. And sometimes we just need something new and different to do in our lives, right? We just need to challenge ourselves, and this is a good way to do that.
All right. Well, thanks for talking about ProGen today. And we hope everyone listening who has been thinking about signing up for ProGen will go check out their website.
All right, everyone, have a great week.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our Research Like a Pro online course or join our next study group. Learn more at FamilyLocket.com. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our e-course or study group. If you like what you heard and would like to support this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.